Yo guys, what's up? It's Speo here with the Voice of Reason, coming at you today with another sound design video, so a classic patch building tutorial. In today's video, I'll go over a growly and fat dubstep bass that you'd hear in a Zomboy production or something like that. And I've prepared this quick little example here to show you guys what this bass should sound like when it's finished. So, let's get to rebuilding it. What we're going to do first is we're going to create a maelstrom, as usual, and on that maelstrom we'll select the sawtooth times 16 wavetable for oscillator A, and we'll bring it down to octave 2. And then we'll bring the shift up to 12. So we got a nice kind of metallic sound to build on. Next up, we'll activate oscillator B, and we'll chuck in yet another sawtooth times 16 wavetable, and we'll set it to octave 3. We'll bring this one down a bit though to about 58, or make that 60. This is just to fill out the sound spectrum a bit. Then we'll route the oscillator A into the shaper, and we'll turn the shaper on, leave it on sine mode, and we'll bring the amount up to about 70. Next up, we will switch the filter A to bandpass mode, and we'll bring the frequency all the way down to 0, and we'll add some resonance, so about 30. Next up, we're going to use the filter envelope to modulate the filter A. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the release and sustain to 0, and we'll bring up the attack to about 48, and we'll set the decay at about 64. And then we'll bring the amount up to about 70. And there we can hear our classic kind of bandpass growl going. Sweet. So next up, we're gonna create a Scream for Distortion unit. We'll set it to tape mode as usual, and we'll bring up the speed to 100%, so 127. And we can bring down the damage to about 40. It just gives a little bit more definition to the sound. Next up comes a rack extension, and I use it quite a lot to just make the sound a little more aggressive and have a little more high frequencies. It's not essential to the patch, however, and if you don't have the kilohertz saturator, then yeah, don't sweat it. You can easily reproduce the sound without it. It will just sound a little bit different, and I really like the way the saturator sounds. So what I'm going to do on the saturator is I'm going to bring the mix up to about 28%, and I'll set the drive at about 23. And then I'm going to flip the rack around and connect the filter envelope modulation output of the maelstrom to the color CV in on the saturator. And I'll bring the amount down to somewhere about 64, so about halfway. And this just adds some more color to the sound and makes it a little growlier. As you can hear, it's very, very subtle, but I just like the effect that the saturator has on the sound. So next up, we're gonna create an equalizer. And on the equalizer, we're gonna remove some frequencies that kind of annoy us. So we're gonna set the parameter 1 at 804 Hertz, and we'll bring the gain down a bit. And you can really start hearing the kind of growl sound. It really comes out when you take out frequencies that are just annoying. You can really hear the difference it makes. Yeah, just set the gain somewhere about -12 dB. And then we'll activate parameter 2, and we'll set it at about 250 Hertz. We'll bring the gain all the way down, and we'll bring the Q up to about 25. That is just something I did so my snare could hit through the bass in the example. So if your snare sits somewhere lower at about, I don't know, 200 Hertz, you just bring down the parameter to that. Or you just watch out that the snare just never interferes with the bass. Yeah, you could do that as well. But usually it's not a bad idea to get rid of some frequencies around 200 Hertz in a bass patch anyway, so I'm gonna just have it this way. Yeah, doesn't make that much difference on this patch right here. Next up, I'm gonna create yet another equalizer, and on this equalizer I'll reduce some frequencies at about 335 Hertz. just very gradually, because these frequencies in this area right here, 300 to 800 hertz, they usually are pretty, well, annoying. But they're still important to the sound, so I'm not gonna go that far down with the gain. At about 366 hertz with minus, yeah, 6 dB. Then I'm gonna use parameter 2 at 2000 or like 2.354 kilohertz. I'm gonna bring some of those down as well. Just makes the sound clearer and, yeah, more pleasing to the ear. Then I'm also gonna activate the high shelf and boost some highs. Just bring it up a bit to about 9.1 dB. You can also bring the Q down on that one. Sweet, already sounds pretty good. So in the original chain, I had another rack extension next up, and that is the soft tube saturation knob, which is an awesome rack extension to throw on pretty much everything. But I only used it very, very subtly, so you don't really need it at all. But you can really hear the grit that it adds to the sound. So if you're building like nice dubstep patches, I definitely recommend getting the Faturator rack extension and the saturation knob. It's beautiful. Yeah, but we're gonna crisp up the sound anyway right now, and what we're gonna do for that is we're gonna apply a neat little trick that'll make the sound a lot more gritty and, yeah, a lot more, you know, crunchy. So we're gonna create a stereo imager just to split the sound in a higher frequency part and a lower frequency part. So we're gonna create a line mixer 6-2 beneath that one. We can delete the mix channel because we don't need it. Then we'll flip the rack around and we'll connect the audio output of the stereo imager to the first channel, and the separate out, we'll connect that one to the second channel. So the separate out just contains the low band, so the lower frequencies, and when we flip the rack around again, we'll set the main output of the stereo imager to solo high band. So on this channel we now have the high frequencies of the bass patch, and on this channel we have the low frequencies. Oh, and we need to reconnect the mixer to actually be able to hear our sound, which I tend to forget far too often. So we just take the mixer out, the master out of the line mixer into the input of our mix channel. So there's all the lows, and these are the highs. And what's really cool about this setup is that we can very easily change the X over frequency to modulate how much of the highs are actually going into the signal chain that we're about to set up. So talking about the signal chain, here goes. So we're gonna create an Audiomatic retro transformer, which is the third rack extension in this patch. But if you have Reason 7, you have it anyway, and it's a great device to use on all kinds of stuff. And in this case, we're gonna use the Bright algorithm, and we'll bring the transform all the way up. And just so you can understand, what we now did is we connected the audio out of the stereo imager into this Audiomatic, and as you know, the audio output on the imager is just the high band. So only the high frequencies are going through this device and back in the mixer. And if we set this on Bright, it will sound very crunchy. You hear that? It's just awesome. And we can now change the amount of frequencies going through this Audiomatic with the X over frequencies up here. I set it somewhere at about 896 hertz. That's just a very sweet sound. So next up on this high signal chain, by just right-clicking on the Audiomatic, we can create a Unison effect, just to spread these higher frequencies a bit. But we'll bring the dry wet down to about 30, or make that 20. And while we're at it, we can also create a reverb device on this higher chain. That'll just serve to make the sound feel a little bit more natural, because it's quite synthetic sounding. So I'm gonna just chuck in the film score preset because I like it, and we'll bring down the dry wet to about 20 and the decay as well. We can even bring the dry wet down more to about 12. That's a lot of reverb actually. We'll bring it down even more. We bring the decay down to 7 and the dry wet down to 8. Sweet. Yeah, this is basically the whole signal chain in the rack. But as you can hear, we've got a lot of muddy lows in the sound right now. So what we still have to do is, and I'd like to do that in the mix channel, is create an equalizer and get rid of them lows, which we will then replace with a sub bass, as I did in the example right here. You can hear this is the sub bass, which is a very, is a very simple, just single sine wave patch with, yeah, not many changes. But it makes quite a difference because the muddy lows on the bass patch itself don't sound very good in a mix. So I'm gonna bring them down by turning on the parameter 1, bringing the frequency all the way down and the gain all the way down, and setting the Q somewhere at about 2. And then I'll do the same with parameter 2, bring the frequency down and the gain all the way down, and set the Q at about like 3. So we've got this nice curve, and everything under 100 Hertz is like basically cut. And while we're at it, we're gonna just add more highs, because it's usually a good thing to kind of go wild on the highs. So crunchy. So that much is kind of everything there is to the rack part of this patch. A neat little trick that I applied in the example, and which is just a very cool kind of thing, is to automate the attack on the filter envelope while we're in the sequencer and sequencing out our drop. So I'm gonna alt-click the A, so the attack on the filter envelope, which controls the bandpass filter. And if we draw in a nice little note, and we'll just get ourselves a quick little sequence going here, like that. Set the tempo 140, and right here, sorry if that takes so long, we can do the following. We can just kind of cut these up in little parts, have a quick sequence of notes, and I'm just gonna shorten them a bit so they are more defined, like that. And if we now automate the filter envelope attack to be 0 on these kind of cuts, on these little stutters, that'll sound pretty neat. And yeah, as you can hear in the example, I had this little these little kind of jumps right here, which sound pretty cool. And it's basically just the filter envelope attack to 0 on these kind of little stuttery sections right here. And it really reminds me of some of Zomboy's old dubstep tracks like Game Time or something. I really dig. So yeah, it's a really cool way to have like two kind of different bass sounds, even though it's the same patch. If we bring the attack all the way down, we've got this nice kind of chunky step. That sounds pretty cool. And yeah, it's a great way to kind of creatively sculpt your drop. Yeah, but that's it for the patch. I hope this tutorial was useful and you can use this patch. I know there are quite a lot of rack extension in it, so I probably can't put it in a Reason 5 format without losing the kind of characteristics of this patch. But I do encourage you, if you're still on Reason 5, to kind of take the tips right here, use the filter envelope with the attack automated, have the shift up just a bit on the oscillator A. That makes a huge difference. To have a sawtooth times 16 on octave 2 with the shift up just 12 and running in the shaper with the sine algorithm makes a huge difference. If we didn't have these two elements, it'll sound a lot weaker. We just... I mean, it still sounds like something, but it just sounds so much better if we bring this up a bit. And we'll activate the shaper. So much fatter, you know? So these are like simple stuff that will make your sound a lot better. And using the shaper on sine mode actually brings some of these frequency modulation sounds into your bass patch as well, that you don't really have with the Sawtooth times 16 wavetables, which is just a basic respace. But shaping it with a sine algorithm makes it sound a little bit like some frequency modulation is going on, especially with the bandpass filtering, which makes this patch a very powerful dubstep bass. Okay, but enough ranting from me. I hope you all have an amazing weekend. It's basically Sunday already, isn't it? I kind of lose track of time. But yeah, don't get a cold. And I'll see you next time. Have a good one, or whatever you're having.